All right, so paper in 6 weeks, episode 2. This has been a bit of a tough week. It was one of those like truly roller coaster weeks of research. It started off very strong with my birthday actually on Monday, which was amazing. Some friends got together and then my girlfriend made amazing dinner for us, and it was a great time and I felt like super relaxed and chill. And then on Tuesday I also made some good research progress and I had a really good meeting with my supervisors, kind of like it all started to look like it's coming together. And then on Wednesday I had to kind of piece together my full analysis, because up until that point I was mostly coding everything down on a sample data set, right? Because I'm running a pretty computationally heavy analysis, some simulations involved. So I wanted to make sure that like kind of the coding and the variables and the measures make sense before I put too much time into while running it. So I've been experimenting on like a subset. I'm looking at 32 months as kind of the full sample, and I was running it on like 5 months total, which is pretty good. But because of the selection of the sample, obviously the results change. And the way they changed is not really going in my favor, because one of the core arguments that I was arguing, that like, oh yeah, you know, that's kind of the measure that I want to look at, and like this is what we are building the paper on, was nice and significant, and kind of like it behaved according to what we suspected on the 5 month sample, but it kind of lost. It became like totally insignificant, not significant, when I ran it on 32. So that was a bit of a hit. And then I was like, oh, you know, okay, actually we are trying to use this as a moderator, so maybe I will just run some interaction effect style stuff. But then the interaction effect kind of just like breaks my model, because it's a linear model, right? And then interaction effects are always a bit tricky with collinearity. And then the way I did it is just like completely break my model. Everything was collinear and nothing was really working. So that was the Wednesday afternoon. And then I spent Thursday and Friday being like super busy with very different things that wasn't like directly research related, and that wasn't very good for kind of like the general headspace around the paper, because, well, you know, I was stuck on something and I couldn't really work on it and like really put the time and attention into it that it will need to be debugged. And then I think like the stress just caught up with me by the end of the week. So I'm recording this on Sunday, and I just noticed, and yesterday we spent an hour with my girlfriend talking about this, kind of like workshopping, because I just felt super tense and I was like really anxious and tense, and I was like, you know, something's not right. We kind of came up with the conclusion, which she really expertly pointed out, that like I wasn't really doing anything to process the emotional side of doing this research. And you know, my holy trinity of stress management is always like, write some stuff down, go for a walk, and call your mom. And then I realized that over the last 2 weeks, when I was like really sending it on this research, I did neither of those. Like my notebook had barely any entries. I haven't been on a walk in ages, except like going to the gym and back. That was at least there. And I haven't really talked to family in like a longer time. And I could really tell. So why we're outside right now is because I just wrote some stuff down, went for a walk, and then I also called my mom. And I also talked to my dad a bit too. So it was like a nice, you know, kind of getting some family time, getting some movement in, getting outside. So I guess that's what I wanted this update to be about, you know, making sure that you take the time to actually process the experience of pushing really hard. And you know, sometimes you just don't have the choice, and then you just have to kind of rush through it. But I think 6 weeks is this like rather awkward length of time, because it feels short enough that it feels like you could just push through the whole thing in one go, and you know, like kind of like do damage control along the way and then just like figure it out on the other side. But at the same time, I think it's a little bit too long for it to actually be like a sprint. Like this is not really a marathon yet, but it's also not really a sprint, because if you just grind yourself to the down for 6 weeks straight, that's not gonna go well for anyone. So I guess this is kind of my big takeaway from this week, that I have to be a lot more intentional on how I approach rest, and I need to just be more intentional with how I rest in the next coming 4 weeks of this paper. And you know, the last 2 of that will be at home with family, so I guess that's going to have a bit more rest baked in. but it will come with its own challenges, right? Like trying to spend some time with the family over Christmas while writing a paper. That's going to be a fun time, so stay tuned. But I think by and large, that's what we need to focus on, is that in the time that we have now, just make sure that I actually take the rest, so even just like from a purely kind of like productivity perspective, I just cannot make good work if I am constantly kind of like tense and tired and exhausted of all the stuff happening. So I guess that's the update for the week. It's going to be a bit of a shorter one. It was a bit of a TLDR, but I think this is an important kind of message and experience, both for me to remind myself, and I hope that it can serve as kind of like a warning shot to you. Maybe you are not in the situation where I am now. Maybe you are way past this, and then it might serve as a reminder that, like, you actually need to take a break, because the work harder only gets you so far. The aim for next week is to be a bit more intentional with taking breaks, and we shall see how it goes. I really hope that by the end of next week, I will have kind of the main story of the paper fleshed out. We are working with the AMJ research canvas, and then my deal was with my supervisors that, because they are also going on holiday, right? So I don't want to bother them during their time off with their family. So what I want to do is kind of fill out that canvas with them in the next, well, hopefully week or maximum 2 weeks. And then that kind of like has all the pieces that need to go in the paper, and then I can just take my sweet time typing it out, and then I just like have one more round of kind of revisions with them before we submit. So it's almost like a thesis type of situation, which is very funny, but at least familiar. So that's the aim. I hopefully will have a fully fleshed out research canvas by the end of next week, and then you will see in a week's time whether I do or not.